She blew a kiss to the millionaire CEO, thinking he was blind, but he saw everything and fell in love. It was meant to be a silly moment, a playful gesture across the lobby, just between friends. She never thought he would notice, but the man in the dark suit and sunglasses wasn't just anyone. And what happened next turned her quiet life upside down. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now, let's get back to the story. Oh, come on, Em, just do it. He can't see you anyway. One tiny kiss. Cheer up my Monday. The teasing whispers from her friend behind the desk were louder than Emily Carter would have liked. But the man sitting across the lobby didn't flinch, didn't even turn his head. He sat still, tall, unreadable, sunglasses hiding any chance of eye contact, a slim black cane resting against his thigh. Was he really blind? She wasn't trying to be mean, not at all. In fact, the man looked lonely, or maybe tired. Something about his posture, the way his fingers kept brushing the cane absent-mindedly, the way his shoes were polished but scuffed at the edges, made her heart ache a little. She leaned toward her best friend Tasha and whispered, "You're terrible." Tasha grinned, brushing crumbs from her blouse. "So are Mondays. You owe me one light-hearted moment before lunch." Emily hesitated, then laughed softly. The man still didn't move. With a playful flick of her wrist, subtle enough she hoped it would never be noticed, Emily leaned over the counter, pressed her fingers to her lips, and blew him a kiss. It fluttered across the room like a petal in springtime. She ducked back behind the desk, cheeks flushed, giggling into her hands. Okay, done. Happy now?" Tasha clutched her chest dramatically. Better than caffeine. But across the room, Alexander Hale saw everything. Behind his tinted glasses, his sapphire eyes locked onto the girl with the notebook and the crooked ponytail. That kiss, so light, so unexpected, hit him harder than he'd admit. He should have looked away, should have pretended, but instead he kept watching her laugh, as if she hadn't just shaken the dust off something long buried inside him. The object he clutched, a worn silver pocket watch, clicked open in his palm. His thumb brushed across the inscription inside. "Time is how you love them." A gift from his mother, his compass. He snapped it closed and stood. "Sir, we're ready for you," murmured his assistant, nervously eyeing the reception. Alexander gave the faintest nod and walked past the desk. Emily straightened immediately. "Good afternoon, sir," she said with that same bright tone she used with every visitor. But this time, something about her voice held just a bit of embarrassment. He turned his head in her direction, slowly. Their eyes almost met, though she assumed he couldn't see her. His lips parted like he was about to say something. But instead, he gave a brief, polite nod, and walked on. The media hadn't known the full story, just the headlines, that Alexander Hale, CEO of Hale and Stratton Enterprises, had survived a horrific crash on a winding mountain road in Switzerland. They didn't see the months of rehab, the quiet pain, the silence that replaced his once commanding voice. No one knew he was back in the building. That had been the point. He'd returned in secret. No press, no announcement. Only a few trusted board members knew the truth. Alexander was watching, listening, letting them think he was still recovering abroad. But beneath the disguise, a cane, dark glasses, slightly loosened collar, he was very much present. He was still CEO, just hidden in plain sight. No one knew, not even the receptionist, especially not her. "Do you want one?" Emily offered Tasha a paper bag with 2 remaining almond croissants as they sat behind the front desk later that morning. Tasha shook her head. "I had 2. I'm on a sugar spiral." Emily smiled and tucked her notebook under her arm. "I think that guy really was blind." "Why do you say that?" He didn't react at all. Tasha raised an eyebrow. "Or he's got nerves of steel." Emily let out a small laugh. but her mind wandered back to the moment he passed her desk. There had been something odd, just the tiniest pause, as if he'd noticed her. She brushed the thought away. Several floors above, Alexander stood in front of a mirror in his private office, removing his glasses, the cane leaning against the wall. His assistant Louis lingered nearby, unsure whether to speak. "She's just a receptionist," Louis said carefully, following Alexander's gaze. "Do you want us to move her to another floor?" Alexander didn't respond at first. His reflection looked older than he remembered, quieter. Then he turned slightly. "No, leave her." Louis hesitated. "You're sure?" "She saw me," Alexander said, almost to himself. "Not the job, not the money, just me." A few hours later, Emily was wrapping up a return parcel at the front counter when the lobby doors opened and a tall woman in a camel coat walked in, posture elegant, movements precise. Her black leather gloves were folded neatly in one hand, and she carried an air of someone who expected others to move out of her way. She approached the desk without smiling. "Excuse me," the woman said, voice sharp but polite. "You're the receptionist?" "Yes, ma'am," Emily said, standing straighter. "I'm Eleanor Hale, Alexander's mother." Emily blinked. She'd heard the name before, of course, but never expected to meet her. "It's a pleasure to meet you," she said warmly. Eleanor gave a tight nod, her eyes cool. "Tell me, how long have you worked here?" "Almost 3 years." "And do you enjoy it?" "Yes," Emily answered, trying not to sound uncertain. "Very much." Eleanor's smile barely reached her lips. "I see. Well, it's important to know one's place." Before Emily could ask what that meant, the woman was already turning away, heels echoing against the marble floor. Emily stood frozen behind the desk, unsure if she'd just been insulted or warned. Upstairs, behind a wall of tinted glass, Alexander watched the exchange in silence. The sun was setting when Emily finally stepped outside. Most of the office had cleared out. Tasha had left earlier to pick up her nephew, and Emily had stayed to finish a forgotten inventory report. She perched on the edge of a stone planter near the building entrance, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. The day had felt strange. Not bad exactly, but strange. The mysterious man, the kiss, the elegant woman with a voice like cold marble, and the CEO himself, walking past her desk, pausing just long enough to... The sound of a door opening behind her broke the thought. Emily turned her head and nearly spilled her coffee. He was standing there. The man with the sunglasses, the cane, Alexander Hale, walking straight toward her. Emily's fingers tightened around the paper coffee cup, heat long gone, heart rate climbing with every step he took. He wasn't supposed to be here. Not outside the building, not alone. He walked slower than she remembered from earlier, not because of the cane, but like someone choosing each step carefully. The air between them changed, softening into something curious and unexpected. "I hope I'm not interrupting," he said, stopping just in front of her. His voice was deeper than she'd imagined, steady, deliberate, but with a quiet rasp that suggested he didn't use it often. Emily blinked. "Oh, no, I was just finishing up. Resting. He tilted his head. "Rough day?" Emily gave a nervous chuckle. "That obvious?" "A little." She stood, brushing crumbs from her skirt and immediately regretting her clumsy motion. "Sorry, I didn't expect to see anyone. Most people are gone by now." "I could say the same." He paused, then added, "You're Emily." That froze her for a moment. Yes, I am." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Wait, how do you know my name?" He hesitated. Just long enough for her to notice. Then he gestured toward her lanyard badge. "You wear it around your neck." Her shoulders relaxed. "Right, of course, that makes sense." He offered a polite smile. "I've seen you at the desk. You seem to keep the place together," Emily blushed. "Well, duct tape and charm. That's my management style." That earned the softest laugh from him, a breath more than a chuckle, but real. It startled her in the best way. "I was just going to toss this," she said, lifting her coffee cup. "But if you want company, I could sit a little longer." He didn't say yes. He simply sat beside her. They didn't speak for several seconds, just the sound of distant traffic and the quiet hush of early evening settling in. Then she asked, "Do you come out here often?" "No, first time." "Really? It's the best spot. You get the breeze, the view, and the occasional surprise pigeon attack. It keeps things interesting." He smiled again, a little wider this time. She took a sip of cold coffee, winced, then laughed at herself. Okay, that was a mistake. Without thinking, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. It was a small silver thermos. He held it out. "It's fresh, Colombian, black, no sugar." Emily hesitated. "Are you offering me your coffee?" "Unless you're afraid I've poisoned it," she grinned. "I mean, statistically unlikely, but I'll take the risk." She took the thermos and poured a little into her empty paper cup, surprised at how good it smelled. One sip, and her shoulders dropped in relief. "Okay, you weren't kidding. That's amazing." He looked amused. "I don't kid about coffee." She studied him for a moment, searching for signs beneath the dark glasses. He didn't look quite like the man who'd walked through the lobby this morning, or maybe she was just seeing him differently now. "You know," she said slowly, a teasing smile tugging at her lips, "you're very good at not seeming blind." For a second, she thought she saw the corner of his mouth twitch, almost like he knew exactly what she meant. A pause. He turned his head toward her. "Should I be insulted or flattered?" "Definitely flattered. I mean, the way you move, the way you speak, I wouldn't have guessed." "I've had practice," she smiled softly. "Still, it must be hard, coming back into the world like this." His fingers brushed against the pocket of his suit, where the silver watch rested, hidden for now. "It is," he said quietly. "Harder than I expected." Something about the way he said it made her chest tighten. She shifted closer, enough for their shoulders to almost touch. "Well, if it helps, I think you're doing a lot better than most people would." He looked at her, or in her direction, and said nothing. But the silence between them didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full. "Can I ask you something?" she said after a beat. "Of course." "That woman earlier today, the one in the camel coat, she said her name was Eleanor Hale." He nodded once. "She didn't seem very warm." "No," he said with a hint of a smile. "She rarely is." "Is she really related to Alexander Hale?" "She's his mother." Emily hesitated. "And you know him well?" Another pause. "I know him better than most." "Well," she said, exhaling, "tell him thanks for the job, even if the vending machine on the third floor is always broken." He chuckled under his breath. "I'll pass that along." She looked at him again, studying the scar near his temple. She hadn't noticed it earlier. "Can I say something a little inappropriate?" "I'm intrigued." "You have a really nice laugh. You should use it more." That caught him off guard, and before he could stop himself, he laughed again. Fully this time. "I'll try to remember that." Emily smiled, satisfied. "You seem like someone who could use a reminder to enjoy things." He tilted his head slightly. "And what about you?" "Me? Do you enjoy things?" Her face softened. "I try. Life's better when you don't take it so seriously. Or yourself." "That explains the kiss." She blinked. "What?" He turned his face slightly, not quite looking at her, but close. "This morning, you blew me a kiss." Her heart stopped. "You saw that?" "I did," she gasped, mortified. "Oh, no. I mean, Tasha dared me. I didn't think you could. I'm so sorry." He held up a hand gently. "Oh." No apology necessary. Her hands flew to her face. "That was so unprofessional. You probably think I'm ridiculous." "I think," he said slowly, "it was the first real thing someone's done for me in a long time." That shut her up. Her heart thudded painfully, and her eyes searched his face. Before she could find any words, his phone buzzed. He checked it without rising. "I should go," he said, standing carefully. Emily stood too, a little dazed. Right, of course. He hesitated, then looked back at her. "Thank you for the coffee break." She nodded, cheeks still burning. "Any time." As he walked away, her eyes followed him, still trying to make sense of what had just happened. She turned back toward the building, heart racing, thoughts spinning, and nearly collided with someone standing directly behind her. It was Louis, Alexander's assistant. Expression unreadable, watching everything. Emily froze as she nearly bumped into Louis. He didn't flinch, didn't step back, just stood there, eyes narrowed behind his square-rimmed glasses, a folder tucked against his chest like a shield. "Miss Carter," he said, tone cool and professional. "Staying late?" She swallowed hard, stepping back instinctively. "Just finishing up some reports." He gave a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, and a little coffee break out front with a guest?" There was a sharpness in the way he said it, polite on the surface, but with just enough weight beneath to make her pulse thump harder. "He was just passing by," she said, a little too quickly. "We talked for a few minutes, that's all." "I'm sure." Louis glanced toward the path Alexander had just taken. "You do seem to have made an impression?" Emily opened her mouth to say something, anything, but he was already turning away, walking back into the building without waiting for her reply. Inside the elevator, Louis tapped the button for the executive floor with a bit more force than necessary. Alexander was already waiting when the doors slid open. "Did you enjoy the fresh air?" Louis asked as he stepped in. Alexander removed his glasses and met his assistant's eyes. "Immensely." Louis hesitated, then added, "You do realize someone could have seen you, really seen you." "I was careful. You sat beside the receptionist for 15 minutes. I know exactly how long it was." He folded his arms. "And I wasn't pretending to be anyone else." Louis drew in a breath, steady but clipped. "Your mother's going to hear about this." "She probably already has." Downstairs, Emily was still trying to slow her racing heart. It wasn't just the embarrassment, though that was bad enough, but the feeling that something had shifted, and she wasn't sure how to hold it. By the time she reached the staff kitchen, her coffee was cold again. She stared into the cup and whispered to herself, "Brilliant, Emily, just brilliant." "Talking to your drink?" Tasha's voice chimed behind her. "Need an intervention?" Emily jumped. "You scared me." Tasha leaned against the counter with a grin. "You're jumpy. Did something happen?" Emily paused, thought about lying, then gave up. "I talked to him." "The blind guy?" Emily lowered her voice. "He's not blind." Tasha blinked. "Wait, what?" "He saw me. The kiss, everything." Tasha's jaw dropped. "Oh my, what did he say?" He laughed. Then we shared coffee. "And now I think I've embarrassed myself permanently." Tasha squealed softly. "You're living a rom-com. He's handsome, mysterious, rich." "I never said he was rich." Tasha gave her a look. "Please, that cane was Italian leather. That man smells like a book you want to read slowly." Emily burst out laughing. "What does that even mean?" "I don't know, but it's true." They both laughed until someone cleared their throat at the door. Eleanor Hale stood in the doorway. The smile died on Emily's lips. "Miss Carter," Eleanor said, voice like chilled porcelain, "I wonder if you might join me for tea." "Upstairs?" Emily glanced at Tasha, who silently mouthed, "What did you do?" Numb, Emily followed Eleanor into the private executive lounge, a quiet, sunlit room with velvet chairs and antique wood shelves. Eleanor poured tea without asking how Emily liked it. No sugar, no milk, just steeped and still hot enough to burn. "I wanted to get a better sense of who you are," Eleanor said calmly, stirring her own tea without ever taking a sip. "It's important to understand who greets our name at the door." She looked up, her tone still polite. "You've worked here 3 years?" Emily nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "And never sought promotion?" "I like the front desk." "I like welcoming people." Eleanor smiled, but it felt more like strategy than warmth. "And what kind of people are you drawn to, Miss Carter?" The question felt loaded, like a trap, with lace on top. "I try to treat everyone kindly," she said carefully, "regardless of who they are." Eleanor's eyes studied her. That's a rare quality these days. Emily didn't know if it was a compliment or a warning. At that moment, Alexander entered. His presence immediately shifted the room's energy. "Mother," he said, "you've commandeered the lounge again." Eleanor stood and kissed him on the cheek. "I thought I'd get to know your staff." Alexander's eyes flicked to Emily for half a second. "Some of them are worth knowing." Emily's breath caught. Eleanor watched her son with a touch of something unreadable. "Well, I'll leave you to your management." She exited with a flourish. Alexander turned to Emily. "Did she interrogate you?" "A little." "Did you survive?" "Barely." He reached into his pocket, fingers brushing the silver pocket watch. He didn't take it out, just held it, like grounding himself. "You okay?" he asked. Emily gave a small, brave smile. "I've had worse. One time a courier threw up on my shoes. I made it through that." He chuckled softly. "You're tougher than you look." "So are you." Their eyes met. It held longer than it should have. A gentle knock at the door made them both look. Lewis stood in the doorway again. "Sir, we have a situation." Alexander's expression shifted. "What kind?" Lewis stepped in, holding a phone. "This just showed up on one of the gossip accounts. Anonymous submission." He turned the screen. It was a photo taken from across the street of Emily and Alexander sitting outside on the stone planter, shoulders close, smiling, coffee in hand, no glasses, no cane in use. The caption read, "Who's the mystery man charming the front desk girl at Hale & Stratton? It's a new romance, CEO or Casanova." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Alexander stared at the screen, and Lewis said quietly, "We're not the only ones watching anymore." By the next morning, the office was humming with the kind of energy Emily hated most. Quiet tension pretending to be polite. People didn't stare directly. They never did. But their glances flicked over her as she passed, pausing just a second too long. Conversations trailed off when she entered rooms. Laughter faded when she stepped into elevators. Every interaction had the same rhythm: smile, nod, silence, pretend. The photo had spread like wildfire. No names were tagged, but it didn't need names. People knew. They knew that was her, in her coral blouse and blue skirt. And the man beside her, though dressed plainly, glasses off, cane out of sight, was now the subject of the most delicious speculation in the company. Emily Carter, receptionist, and her mystery man. Tasha walked beside her, holding a clipboard she wasn't even pretending to read. "It's ridiculous," she whispered. "You didn't do anything wrong." Emily gave a soft, hollow laugh. "That never really mattered, did it? You were just sitting outside, drinking coffee, being human. I shouldn't have been seen with him. I don't even know what his real name is." They turned a corner, and two junior assistants from legal abruptly stopped talking and pretended to look busy with the vending machine. Tasha sighed. "You know what I hate most about people. They pretend they want truth, but really, they just want something to whisper about." Emily didn't answer. She was still trying to ignore the twist in her stomach, that horrible mixture of guilt and helplessness. She hadn't meant to cause trouble. But somehow, she always seemed to end up at the center of it. Upstairs, Alexander stared at his screen in silence. The photo was still up on the gossip account, now with hundreds of comments. "She's adorable. Who is he? OMG, finally, someone caught the Hale heir dating a regular. That's the receptionist. Right? I've seen her in the lobby. Boss man and the front desk girl. That's gonna blow up." Lewis stood a few feet away, arms crossed. "I can have it taken down." "No," Alexander said, still watching the comments scroll by. "Taking it down will just confirm it's real." Lewis didn't argue, but his silence said enough. "I need to talk to her," Alexander added, standing and walking toward the door. That might make things worse. She deserves to hear from me directly. You think she's ready for the truth?" Alexander paused, his hand on the pocket that held the silver watch. The weight of it grounded him, the same way it always had. "I don't know if anyone's ever really ready," he said quietly. Earlier that morning, Lewis had paused by his desk phone, frowning at the missed calls flashing across the display. No caller ID, no messages, just silence on the other end. "Strange," he'd muttered to himself. "Feels like someone's trying to tell me something without saying it." Meanwhile, Emily was in the mailroom desperately trying to breathe. A woman from HR had smiled at her strangely on the way in, a tight smile, almost sympathetic. That was usually the kiss of death. She pulled the strap of her bag tighter over her shoulder, muttering to herself, "Okay, just make it through the day. Keep your head down, answer phones. Pretend your life isn't on the internet." Then a small voice piped up behind her. "Are you the girl from the photo?" Emily turned. A boy, no more than 7, stood beside his mother, who was signing in at reception. He had round glasses, a chocolate-smeared mouth, and absolutely no sense of timing. Emily blinked. "Sorry?" The boy pointed at her. "You were on my mom's phone this morning. She said you kissed the CEO." Emily felt her soul leave her body. The mother turned red. "Charlie, no." "But you did. You said it was kind of sweet, but also a scandal." The mother grabbed the boy's shoulders and gave Emily an apologetic look. "I am so sorry." Emily shook her head, managing a weak smile. "It's okay. Kids have perfect hearing." As they walked off, Tasha popped out from behind a filing cabinet. "Well, that's your public image handled. I need to move to another continent. You need lunch." A little while later, they sat under the pergola in the small garden behind the building. A rarely used staff area with mismatched benches and a clunky water fountain. Emily picked at her sandwich while Tasha demolished a container of noodles. "Any word from Mystery Man?" Tasha asked between bites. "No? And maybe that's for the best." "You still don't know who he is?" "I know his laugh. And that he drinks black coffee. That's about it." Tasha eyed her. "And if he turned out to be somebody important?" Emily looked up. "He already is, at least. He was kind to me when he didn't have to be." Tasha softened. "You're way too noble for this place." Just then, someone cleared their throat behind them. Alexander stood a few feet away, sunglasses off now, his expression unreadable. Tasha blinked. "Okay, wow. You're taller than I imagined." Alexander nodded toward her with faint amusement. "Nice to see you again." Then his eyes moved to Emily. "Can we talk?" he asked gently. Tasha stood immediately. "Absolutely. I was just going to check if the vending machine's still evil." She disappeared with a wink. Emily stood slowly. "You're brave," she said quietly, "coming out here. I figured hiding would send the wrong message." They sat again, side by side. "I'm sorry," he said after a moment. "For what?" "For not warning you." "For not being honest. For not stopping the photo from becoming whatever this is." She looked down at her lap. "It's not your fault." "It is," he said, "because I started this, and I should have ended it the moment I realized you were in the middle of it." Emily was quiet. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver watch. She tilted her head. "Is that antique?" "It was my mother's. She gave it to me when I was 17. Said, 'Time is how you love them.'" Emily stared at the inscription. "That's beautiful." "It's also impossible," he said, "because I never seem to have enough of it. And I always spend it in the wrong places." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time, saw something fragile behind all the strength. "I wish you didn't feel like you had to hide." "I do." "From who?" "Everyone." Silence settled between them again, but this time it didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt honest. Emily opened her mouth to ask something, but a voice interrupted. It was Eleanor. Her heels clicked over the stones like a warning. "I thought I might find you here," she said, eyeing them both. Alexander stood. So did Emily instinctively. Eleanor's eyes rested on Emily with faint disdain. "I believe a public statement is being drafted," she said smoothly, "to protect reputations." "One of them being yours, Miss Carter." Emily's stomach dropped. "A statement?" she asked. Alexander's jaw tensed. "Yes," Eleanor said. "You'll be mentioned as a misunderstanding." Alexander stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "There will be no statement." Eleanor looked at her son with thinly veiled fury. "You're not thinking clearly. And you're not thinking kindly." Emily stood between them, heart pounding. "What does this mean?" she asked softly. Alexander looked at her and said, "It means you deserve to know who I really am." Emily stood very still, the late afternoon breeze brushing a strand of hair across her cheek. But she didn't move. She barely blinked. "You're what?" she asked, her voice a whisper, not out of softness, but because anything louder might have cracked. Alexander exhaled slowly, then offered his hand, not to shake, but as if trying to bridge a gap that had suddenly opened between them. "I'm Alexander Hale." The name landed like a stone in water. Emily stared at him. The CEO. The man whose company name was etched into the brass above the entrance. The man she'd unknowingly joked with, laughed with, nearly flirted with. The same man she had blown a kiss to in a crowded lobby, believing he couldn't see her. "You're—" her breath caught. "You're him." "I was never trying to trick you," he said quickly. "After the accident, I needed to see who I could trust. No one was supposed to know I was back, not even the board. I've been walking the halls like a ghost." "Except I wasn't a ghost," she interrupted. There it was, her voice, now firm and clear. "I wasn't pretending. I wasn't hiding behind anything." "And you let me make a fool of myself. You weren't foolish. Then what was I?" He hesitated. "You were the only honest thing I'd seen in a long time." Her eyes glistened, but she didn't blink them away. "You watched me. You let me talk to you like we were equals. You let me believe something was real." "It was real," he said, stepping forward, but she stepped back. "I need to go." "Emily, I have work to do and a job I'd like to keep in case that's still allowed." With that, she turned and walked back toward the building, shoes clicking against the stone, every step louder than the last. Alexander stayed where he was. Where? Alone in the garden, the moment hanging in the air like a question with no answer. In his hand, the pocket watch ticked faintly, but time wasn't helping him now. When Emily entered the building, the shift was immediate. People had seen, from windows, from the break room, from whispers that traveled faster than light. Now, they didn't just look at her, they watched. The receptionist, the girl from the photo. And now, the girl who had just walked away from the CEO himself. Tasha met her at the front desk, wide-eyed. "Okay, don't panic," she said under her breath, "but everyone's watching you like you're the season finale." Emily didn't speak. Tasha blinked. "Wait, you know who he is now, don't you?" She gave the smallest nod. Tasha slowly set down her clipboard. "Holy, Emily, Emily, you had coffee with the CEO. You told him he had a nice laugh and you—" "I blew him a kiss," Emily whispered, sinking into her chair. Tasha tried not to laugh and failed spectacularly. Emily stared at her. "This is not funny." "No, it's not. But it's also incredible. This is like Jane Austen meets The Devil Wears Prada." "What did he say?" "That he never meant to lie, that he needed to see who he could trust." Tasha leaned closer. "And do you?" Emily didn't answer. "Emily!" She didn't know. All she could feel was the weight of every moment that now felt different. That little laugh over coffee, that awkward, almost flirtation, that spark she hadn't let herself name. Had it all been watched, measured? A test? By lunchtime, the whispers turned into half-smiles and faux-sweet greetings. People were being too nice, which was worse than being cruel. Eleanor Hale passed by without a word, but her look said everything. You don't belong here." In the afternoon, a small bouquet appeared on the reception desk. Not roses, not anything flashy, just a bundle of white gardenias and blue forget-me-nots. No card, but Emily knew. Tasha spotted it first and raised an eyebrow. "If that man starts writing poetry, I swear I'm going to faint." Emily picked up the bouquet slowly. The flowers were delicate, thoughtful, and quiet, just like the man she thought she'd known, just like the moment he'd offered her coffee, without saying a word about who he really was. She held them to her chest for a moment, then set them down. "Did you see him today?" Tasha asked. "No." "Do you want to?" Emily hesitated. "I don't know." Just then, Lewis entered the lobby. He walked straight to the desk and lowered his voice. "Miss Carter, the board is requesting to speak with you." Emily blinked. "What?" Lewis nodded. "Privately. Conference room 4. Now." Tasha looked at her, alarmed. "That doesn't sound good." Emily stood slowly. "No, it doesn't." As she followed Lewis down the corridor, her heart thudded harder with every step. Inside the boardroom, 3 men and 1 woman sat at the long glass table. All of them wore polite, tight expressions. "Miss Carter," one said. "Thank you for coming." She sat cautiously. Another spoke. "We're aware of the public attention your acquaintance with Mr. Hale has brought. For now, there's no formal concern, but there are internal conversations about propriety, boundaries, and brand protection." "I understand," she said quietly. The woman leaned forward, fingers clasped. "We'd like to offer you the opportunity to step away, quietly. We'll provide severance, a letter of recommendation, and assistance finding a new role elsewhere." Emily stared at her. "You're asking me to leave? We're giving you an option." Emily didn't respond right away because part of her, the practical part, wanted to say yes, to run, to erase the photo, the kiss, the coffee, the man with the watch who smiled like he hadn't in years. But another part of her, the one that knew how to stand tall even when the ground trembled, stayed silent. "I'd like to think about it," she said. "Of course," the man replied. "Take the evening. Let us know in the morning." As she left the room, her hands trembled slightly, but her back stayed straight. She didn't notice the woman watching from down the hallway, leaning slightly against the doorframe. Arms folded, eyes narrowed. It was Eleanor Hale, and she was smiling. The sound of the train rattled gently beneath Emily's feet as she looked out the window, forehead resting lightly against the glass. The bouquet of gardenias was tucked inside her tote bag. Her badge was still around her neck, though she'd almost taken it off 4 times during the ride. She didn't go home, not right away. Instead, she rode north, past the city, past the noise, past the weight of what had become her daily storm, until the buildings gave way to trees and the wind softened with space. Her grandmother's house still looked exactly the same. Yellow porch swing, wind chimes that hadn't been replaced since 1992, and a ceramic frog in the flower bed that had lost an eye decades ago. Her grandma opened the door before Emily could knock. "You've got that 'I need tea and silence' face," she said with a smirk. "Get in here." Emily smiled despite herself. "And maybe a cookie?" "Cookies are mandatory when your world's on fire." The living room smelled like lemon oil and old books. Emily sat on the couch, pulled her knees to her chest, and finally, exhaled. "I think I'm being pushed out of my job." Her grandma didn't say anything, just poured the tea. Emily continued, "There was this man. I didn't know who he was. We talked a few times, shared coffee. It felt human. And now that I know the truth, I feel like the entire world is watching, waiting for me to mess up." Her grandmother handed her the tea, sat beside her, and patted her leg. "You're not a mess? Emmy, you're just honest, and most people can't handle that." Emily's throat tightened. "I blew a kiss at my billionaire boss, Nana." "Did he deserve it?" She blinked. "What? Was he kind? Did he make you laugh? Did he see you?" Emily looked down at the cup in her hands. Yes? Then the world can sit on a fork. She burst out laughing, tears brimming despite the smile. You always say the most inappropriate things at the right time. It's a gift, her grandmother said, sipping her tea like royalty. That same night, Alexander sat in his penthouse apartment, alone with the silence and the weight of 100 things unsaid. The photo was still up. The board hadn't removed it, maybe because they were waiting for him to act. He didn't. Instead, he sat at the edge of the couch, holding the pocket watch between both palms, thumb tracing the edge like it held a door to some better version of himself. He thought of Emily's face when he told her, of how her eyes didn't widen in awe, only in disappointment. He had built an empire by knowing how to control everything. But not this, not her. And now, with every hour that passed, he feared he'd spent too long protecting himself and forgotten how to reach someone else. He clicked the watch shut and whispered into the empty room, I wasn't pretending with you. The next morning, Emily returned to work. Hair pulled back tighter than usual. Shirt buttoned to the collar, chin up. She didn't know if it was courage or exhaustion that carried her through the doors, but either way, she walked like someone who had made a decision, even if she hadn't figured out what it was yet. Tasha was waiting at the desk. You're early, she said. I needed the quiet. Tasha handed her a paper cup. Well, here's courage in the form of cappuccino. Emily took it. Thanks. You've got this. I mean it. They shared a look that didn't need words. Emily sat down, turned on her screen, and began sorting the morning appointments like nothing had happened. Like the internet hadn't dissected her smile. Like she hadn't been quietly offered a graceful exit like an inconvenient story. And then, just as she was answering a call from a florist trying to deliver orchids to the 12th floor, someone placed a small paper bag on the counter. She looked up. It was Bernard, the night janitor. He gave her a little nod. Figured you might have missed breakfast. It's banana bread. My wife makes extra when she's nervous. She's been watching the gossip account like it's a soap opera. Emily blinked back the sting behind her eyes. Thank you, Bernard. Don't let him make you small, he said. You've been kind to me since day one. Another micro-victory? Another reason to stay. But across the building, Eleanor Hale was already rewriting the ending. She stood in the glass office at the end of the hall, flipping through a slim manila file. Her assistant hovered nearby. I want this included in the final recommendation package, she said, tapping one of the pages. It's personal. It's public record, Eleanor replied, cool as snow. It's a minor family dispute, but enough to paint her as unstable under pressure. The assistant hesitated. Ma'am, are you sure? She's sweet, Eleanor said, and naive. But this company isn't built on kindness. She closed the file. It's built on legacy. Later that afternoon, Alexander stepped off the elevator and walked straight to the reception desk. Emily looked up, startled, then quickly masked it. He wasn't wearing the glasses this time, or the cane, just himself. He knew the risk. But concealment was beginning to cost more than exposure. And the watch. She straightened. Can I help you? He smiled, barely. I wanted to talk, one last time, before you decide. She glanced down the hallway. People were watching. I shouldn't be seen with you. Then let's go somewhere no one can see us. She hesitated, then stood. They walked side by side, silently, until they reached the old storage stairwell, the one no one used. He opened the door for her. Inside it was dim, quiet. The city hummed faintly beyond the walls. I know I've made this harder for you, he said softly, and I know I don't deserve anything from you, but there's something I need you to see. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the file Eleanor had been holding earlier. I wasn't supposed to find this, he said, but I did. He opened it in front of her, and Emily gasped. Inside were copies of private records, court transcripts, A family dispute she hadn't spoken about in years, her father's name, her old address. Eleanor had gone digging. "You weren't supposed to see this," Alexander repeated, "but I think you should know. Someone wants you gone." Emily stared at the file, her past laid out in ink and assumption, and then she whispered, "She's not trying to protect your company. No, she's trying to protect her place in your life." Alexander didn't deny it. But he stepped forward. "You still have a choice." She looked at him, then at the file, and for the first time, the fear in her eyes wasn't for herself. It was for him. The folder in Emily's hands felt heavier than paper had any right to be. She sat on the edge of the old storage stairwell, her fingers trembling slightly as she turned the final page. The court document wasn't dramatic, just dry transcripts from a custody hearing when she was 15. Her father had left, her mother had disappeared, her grandmother had stepped in. It had taken months to sort out. It wasn't scandalous, it wasn't shameful, but it was real, and now it was being used against her. Alexander stood beside the railing, hands in his pockets, watching her with a heaviness in his shoulders that didn't match the fine tailoring of his suit. "I didn't know she'd gone this far," he said softly. "But I should have guessed." Emily didn't look up. "It's not just about me. I know. It's about power. Reputation, bloodline." She finally met his eyes. "And I'm none of those things." Alexander stepped closer, just enough to lower his voice. "You're the only thing that's felt real since I woke up in that hospital bed." Silence. He looked down at the floor between them. "After the crash, I couldn't walk straight. Couldn't focus. They told me I'd never see properly again, that I might never feel the same. And they were right. I didn't feel the same." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the silver pocket watch, clicked it open. "I used to measure time by deadlines, by markets, by quarterly reports." He turned the watch toward her. "Now I measure it by moments I didn't see coming, like you." Emily's throat tightened. She wasn't ready to forgive, but his honesty was no longer something she could ignore. She touched the edge of the folder in her lap. "She's going to use this to push me out." "Then don't let her." "I don't have power here. You have your voice." She paused, then stood. And for the first time in days, she looked like someone who remembered who she was. "You're right." Alexander blinked. "Wait, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to give them what they want." He looked alarmed. "Emily," she turned to him with a glimmer in her eyes. "They want a story?" A beat. "Then I'll tell them the truth." The next morning, the board assembled earlier than usual. The atmosphere in Conference Room 4 was stiff, careful, and already buzzing with anticipation. Eleanor Hale stood at the head of the table, calm as a queen presiding over a formality. Her assistant stood nearby, hands folded, silent. "We appreciate you coming," one of the board members said as Emily entered. She wore the same coral blouse from the photo, and she didn't flinch. "We understand you've had time to consider our offer," Eleanor said smoothly. "We believe a quiet transition would be best for all involved." Emily smiled, and not the kind of smile meant to please. "I appreciate the offer," she said, "but I'd like to speak, on the record." The board shifted in their chairs. Eleanor narrowed her eyes. "Miss Carter, this isn't—" "I believe I have the right," Emily interrupted gently. "I'm still an employee, for now." The chairman nodded. "We'll allow it." Emily opened the folder slowly, not the one Eleanor had prepared, but her own. She pulled out a printed photo. It wasn't the gossip photo. It was one of her at 16, standing in front of a community center with a paintbrush in hand. The mural behind her read, "Be the person you needed when you were younger." "My past isn't perfect," she began. "But it's mine. My father left, my mother broke, and my grandmother taught me that love isn't what you say, it's what you show." She looked directly at Eleanor. "Someone here believes that disqualifies me from sitting at a desk in your company." She turned to the rest of the board. "I think it qualifies me more than most." A pause. She continued, voice steady. I've never taken more than my paycheck. I've stayed late, arrived early, memorized every face that walks through that lobby, not because anyone told me to, but because I believe dignity is in the details, even when no one sees you. Her eyes found Alexander's mother again. I know you built this place to last, but legacies aren't stone, they're people. And then she stepped back, placed the photo down, and added with a quiet smile, "If you still want me to leave, I'll go." The room was silent for a long time. Then one of the board members, a quiet woman from finance whom Emily had only spoken to twice, cleared her throat. "I think we've heard enough," she said. The others nodded. Eleanor remained perfectly still. Outside the room, Alexander was waiting. Emily came out with her shoulders a little straighter. "Well?" he asked. She let out a long breath. "I don't know yet. But you did it." "I did." He looked at her, like she was something rare. And then from behind them, a voice called out, "You may want to hear this." It was Louis holding his phone. He turned the volume up and pressed play on a voicemail recording. It was Eleanor's voice, cold, sharp. "We cannot afford to have some charity case receptionist ruin this company's image. If that means releasing the transcripts, so be it. Just make sure it doesn't trace back to me." Emily's mouth parted. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "Where did you get this?" he asked Louis. "It was left anonymously, on my private line." Emily stared at the screen, then whispered, she was really going to do it. Alexander stepped back, jaw tight, and then he looked at Emily, voice firm. "This changes everything." Emily didn't answer, because for the first time, she believed him. By the time the voicemail reached the rest of the board, Eleanor Hale had already summoned her assistant, shredded the transcript copies, and arranged a meeting with legal, all within 20 minutes. But it wasn't fast enough. The damage was done. The voice in the voicemail was unmistakably hers, cold, calculated, cruel. "Just make sure it doesn't trace back to me." But it had, and the whispers that had once followed Emily now began to shift direction, quietly, carefully toward the woman who had built the company's name, and now stood accused of trying to bury someone else's. That afternoon, Emily returned to her desk and found something sitting atop her keyboard, a small folded card. Inside, it said only 3 words, "You were heard." No signature, but she knew the handwriting. It was from the finance board member who had spoken up. She closed the note gently, then slid it into her notebook, right next to her badge. For once, she didn't feel like she was being watched. She felt like she was being seen. Across the building, in the top-floor lounge, Alexander stood facing the city skyline, watch in hand, while Eleanor entered without knocking. "You wanted to speak with me?" she asked. Voice crisp. "I did," he said, not turning around. She waited. Finally, he turned, and placed the silver pocket watch on the table between them. The room fell quiet. Eleanor's expression flickered, only for a second, at the sight of it. "This was your father's," she said. "No, it was yours, before you gave it to me." She looked down at it. "And now, I'm giving it back." The air changed. "This company doesn't need to run on fear anymore," he said calmly. "It never did." Eleanor straightened her shoulders. "You're being emotional." "No," he replied. "I'm finally being clear." She stepped closer. "You think you're choosing love, but what you're choosing is exposure. Risk. Weakness." He met her eyes, firm. "What I'm choosing is integrity." Eleanor exhaled slowly, then reached for the watch, but he closed his hand over it first. Not yet. By late afternoon, the company intranet buzzed with an internal notice. An open forum would be held the next morning, where staff could ask anonymous questions to the board and CEO directly. It was the first event of its kind in Hale and Stratton history. Emily stared at the announcement on the screen, heart pounding. It felt impossible. And yet, It was happening. She turned to Tasha. "Do you think this is a good idea?" Tasha replied, "I think if they're giving you a mic, you better use it." Emily smirked. "What if they shut it down mid-sentence? Then you throw your shoe at someone, preferably someone important." They laughed, not just because it was funny, but because laughter in that moment felt like proof they'd survived something. That evening, as the building emptied, Alexander approached Emily quietly. She was organizing the mail cart halfway through, alphabetizing a stack of envelopes, pretending like tomorrow wasn't looming like a mountain. "I wanted to thank you," he said. She glanced up. "For surviving your mother? For not letting me hide behind her?" Emily stood and brushed her hands on her skirt. "You're not bad at disappearing, you know. I was always taught that vulnerability was dangerous. And now?" He hesitated. "Now, I think silence is worse." She tilted her head. "Is that your way of saying you're going to speak tomorrow?" "I am." "Publicly?" "In front of everyone." Emily's brows lifted. Big move for a man who couldn't even admit he wasn't blind. He smiled. "Just a little." "Careful," she said, stepping past him. "People might start thinking you're human." He watched her go, then looked down at the envelope she'd dropped. Inside was a note, her own words printed cleanly. "Legacies aren't stone, they're people." That night, in a quiet cafe 2 blocks from the office, someone was typing. Their fingers moved fast, methodical. They weren't board members. They weren't press. They weren't family. But they had access. And they had a file. Inside the email draft was a photo attachment. From 6 months ago, Emily Carter at a community protest, holding a handmade sign. It wasn't scandalous, but it was opinionated. The subject line on the draft read, "Is this who represents Hale and Stratton?" And the mouse hovered over send. Emily woke up to a message from Tasha that simply said, "Check your email, now." Still half asleep, she unlocked her phone. There it was. A forwarded chain. Subject line, "Is this who represents Hale and Stratton?" Attached, a photo from a protest nearly a year ago. Emily stood beside a crowd holding a handwritten sign. People before profits, always. Her hair was windblown. Her face calm. She wasn't shouting. She wasn't leading. But she was there. And that, apparently, was enough. The caption added by the sender was short, sharp, and meant to wound. "Receptionist or radical? A company can't have both." Emily stared at the screen for several seconds, blinking like it might disappear if she looked hard enough. It didn't. Her phone buzzed again. More messages. People asking if it was real. Others sending vague emojis, some not saying anything at all, which was worse. She sat at the edge of her bed, frozen. The part that hurt most wasn't the photo. It was the idea that someone had gone looking for it. By 8:52 a.m., the open forum was packed. Employees filled the largest conference hall on the 14th floor. Most had never seen Alexander Hale in person, and certainly not standing at a podium without his usual armor, the glasses, the cane, the silence. But he was there. At exactly 9, he stepped forward, placed both hands on the lectern, and began. "No script," he said, "no teleprompter. Just the truth." Phones came up immediately. Screens glowed. "In the past month," he continued, "I've learned more about my own company than I had in the past 5 years. Some of it surprised me, some of it disappointed me, and one thing changed me." The silence was electric. "I've always believed in protecting this place, its name, its legacy, but somewhere along the way, I forgot that a name is nothing if it doesn't protect the people who carry it." He looked out over the room. His eyes found her. "Emily Carter is one of those people." Gasps, whispers. "She's not just a receptionist. She's the reason clients feel welcome, the reason security guards smile when they clock in. She brings dignity to the front door. And that matters more to me than how someone dresses or where they come from." He paused, then added, "Yes, she stood at a protest. Yes, she held a sign. That doesn't disqualify her. He reached into his pocket and held up the silver watch, then placed it flat on the podium. My mother gave me this. She said, "Time is how you love them." I used to think she meant family, but now I think she meant anyone brave enough to stand for something. He stepped back. The room didn't clap, not at first, because no one expected him to say what he just had, but slowly, hands came together. Then more. Then the entire room stood, not for him, for her. Emily sat near the back, too stunned to move. Tasha whispered, "You just got a standing ovation in a building where people used to avoid eye contact in the elevator?" Emily was speechless. Then someone tapped her shoulder. It was Bernard. He held out a banana muffin in a napkin. "You're going to need this today," she laughed, and this time it reached her eyes. "Thank you." But the moment was cut short when her phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. This isn't over. No name, but she knew who it was. Upstairs, Eleanor Hale watched the live stream replay alone. She paused it on the image of Alexander holding up the watch. Her lips pressed into a thin line. He'd used the symbol she taught him against her. She stood, walked to her private safe, opened it. Inside, files, letters, leverage. And at the very bottom, something she hadn't touched in years, a signed contract from a small, forgotten merger, an agreement made during the company's early days. It held a clause, one that could, under very specific conditions, force a vote of temporary removal. Her fingers hovered over it, and she whispered, "If you want war, son, you'll have it." The board was called into an emergency session just after noon. At first, no one knew why. The company had survived the photo leak, the gossip logs, the protest image. Alexander's speech had shifted the mood of the entire office, perhaps even restored some quiet faith. But now a vote had been triggered. Temporary removal of the CEO. The clause had only been used once in the company's history, during a scandal decades ago, buried in a merger file. And now, Eleanor had dusted it off like a loaded weapon. It was a rare, conditional clause meant to be invoked only under material reputational risk to the company. And only with a unanimous board consensus. No one had expected to see it used again. Alexander stood at the end of the long table, calm but firm. "You're using a clause meant for corruption," he said. "I'm using the tools at my disposal," Eleanor replied coolly. "You've allowed personal relationships to cloud judgment. You've made the company vulnerable. If you won't protect its legacy, I will." Emily stood silently near the door, brought in only moments before. Her presence, again, was part of the strategy. To shame him, to prove favoritism. Eleanor gestured toward her. This began with her. Alexander's gaze didn't leave his mother. "No, this began when we forgot that dignity isn't reserved for people with last names on buildings." Eleanor's eyes flashed. The vote began. One by one, the board gave their answers. Some spoke quietly, some looked away, others barely breathed. When it came to the final vote, the deciding one, the last board member hesitated. It was the woman from finance. She looked at Emily, then at Alexander, then said softly, "This company is built on legacy, yes, but legacy means nothing if it's protected by fear and not integrity." She turned to Eleanor. "I vote no on removal." The vote failed. Alexander remained CEO. The room exhaled. Pure, except Eleanor. She stood slowly, hands pressed flat to the table. "You've made a mistake." "No," Alexander replied. "I've made a decision." He reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the silver watch, and placed it again on the table. But this time, he pushed it across the surface, toward her. "I don't want this to be war," he said gently. "But if this watch means control to you, you can have it. If it means time and love to me, then I'm free." Eleanor looked at it, at him, then turned and left. without another word. Hours later, the building was quiet again. Emily sat at her desk, still trying to process what had happened, how quickly things could fall apart and come back together. She reached for the notebook she always kept near the phone. A small folded note slipped out from between the pages. She opened it. It read, "Truth doesn't need power to stand, just courage." No name. But this time, she didn't need one. Just then, she looked up and saw him, Alexander. No suit, no title, just him. He walked across the lobby slowly, no glasses, no cane. And when he reached her desk, he didn't say anything at first. He just looked at her. The way you look at someone when there's nothing left to prove. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "Not for what I feel, but for not knowing how to carry it." Emily stood. "Do you still carry it?" "Yes," he said, "every day." She searched his eyes and then smiled. "You're lucky I believe in second chances." He exhaled a quiet laugh. "So, what happens now?" he asked. Emily looked around the lobby, then leaned forward. "You come back tomorrow, and I still make you sign in like everybody else." He laughed again, full, genuine, and unguarded. And as he turned to leave, she called after him, "Wait." He turned. She stepped around the desk, slowly, then stood in front of him. "I never said thank you," she said. "For what?" "For seeing me, even when I thought you couldn't." A pause, then, without hesitation this time, she rose onto her toes and kissed him. Soft, sincere, certain, and this time he let the world see. In a quiet corner office, a hand closed the laptop. The anonymous sender of the protest photo leaned back, alone, unseen. They hadn't been paid, they hadn't been praised. But something in them shifted watching that kiss, because in a world full of games and power and names that echoed like bells, someone had still chosen love, even when it cost them everything. 3 months later, spring had returned to the city. The trees along the boulevard near Hale and Stratton bloomed in soft bursts of pink and white. The building's marble steps, once cold and intimidating, now felt like part of something softer, like they belonged to the people walking through them. Inside, the lobby had changed too, subtly. A small framed photo now sat at the reception desk, a black and white image of a young woman painting a mural. Below it, a plaque read, "Dignity isn't given, it's remembered." Most people didn't know the story behind it, but those who mattered did. Emily no longer wore a lanyard. She didn't need to. After the vote, after the speech, after the kiss, seen by half the office and whispered about by the other half, she took a week off, not to disappear, but to breathe. And when she came back, it wasn't to the front desk. It was to a small corner office on the 3rd floor, overlooking the garden where it all began. Outreach and Culture Liaison, a title she helped create, a job that didn't exist before her. Her role bridged everything she'd once quietly held together at the front desk. The welcome orientations, the anonymous feedback forums, the small acts of connection that kept people seen and heard. Because, as it turned out, people didn't need just leadership. They needed humanity, and she had plenty to give. Alexander Hale didn't change overnight, but he changed. He listened more, laughed more. The pocket watch still lived in his coat pocket, but now it ticked quietly beside handwritten notes. Old postcards, and one small photo of a woman smiling with her hair tied back in a crooked ponytail. Most mornings, he still arrived before anyone else. Except her. She always got there first. One Thursday, as the sun poured gently through the windows, he found her seated on the edge of the planter outside, coffee in hand, legs crossed, eyes closed, breathing in the morning like it was music. He sat beside her. No need for words. She passed him one of the 2 cups she held, his favorite, black, no sugar. He sipped, then smiled. "Still the best view in the company," he said. "I know," she replied. A pause, then slowly he pulled something from his pocket and placed it in her hands. The silver watch. She opened it. Inside, below the original engraving, "Time is how you love them," was a second line now etched carefully into the metal. "Let them know while they're still here." Her eyes welled, but no tears fell. "You want me to have it?" she asked. "No," he said, brushing a curl from her cheek. "I need you to." That afternoon, she gave a talk at the welcome orientation for new hires. No podium, just a chair in the break room. She told them stories about awkward elevator moments, about how the security guard danced when he thought no one was watching, about banana bread that saved her life one Monday morning, and about seeing people, really seeing them, when they least expect it and most need it. At the end, one of the interns asked nervously, "So, how do you stay so calm under pressure?" Emily smiled. "I stopped pretending I had to be anything more than human." Somewhere else in the city, a different email was written, this time not with malice, but apology. The anonymous sender, long hidden, sent one final message. "I thought I was protecting the company, but now I see you were the one doing that all along." Love didn't come with fireworks, no grand speeches, no fairy tale crescendos. It came in quiet breakfasts, in unexpected flowers on Wednesdays, in sharing silence, not just words, in one hand resting on another during a long meeting. Love came because dignity had made room for it, and that was enough, more than enough. If someone were to ask Emily today if she regretted anything, the kiss, the coffee, the chaos, she'd say no, because every part of it taught her something that mattered, that sometimes the smallest things, a note, a smile, a protest sign, a moment of kindness, can shift the entire course of someone's life. And that courage doesn't always roar, sometimes it just shows up. In coral blouses and gardenia bouquets. The end. And you? What would you do if the world was watching, and you had to choose between your name and your truth? Tell me in the comments. Give this story a rating from 0 to 10, and let me know how it made you feel. And if you felt even a fraction of what Emily felt, share it, like it, and subscribe for the next story, because everyone deserves to be seen, especially when they think no one's looking. See you in the next one.